Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Reading from Canto 5, titled The Creative Impetus, chapter number 4, titled The Characteristics of Rishabhadeva, verse number 8. So these are prose verses, there is no meter to it, so I will just try to sing it once and then we'll try to repeat the word to word meanings. अथः भगवान् ऋषभदेवः स्ववर्षं कर्मक्षेत्रम् अनुमन्यमानः प्रदर्शिता गुरुकुलवासो लब्धावरेर्गुरुभिरनुज्ञातो गृहमेधिनां धर्मान् अनुशिक्षमाणो जयन्त्यामिन्द्रदत्तायाम् उभयलक्षणं कर्म समाम्नायाम्नातम् अभियुञ्जन् आत्मजानाम् आत्मसमानानां शतं जनयामास. Word to word meanings. Thereupon, after the departure of his father, indeed, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Rishabhadeva, Rishabdev, Swa, his own, Varsham, kingdom, Karma Kshetram, the field of activities, Anumanyamanaha, accepting as, Pradarshita, shown as an example, Gurukula Vasaha, lived at the Gurukul, Labdha, having achieved, Varaihi, gifts, Gurubhihi, by the spiritual masters, Anujnanataha, being ordered, Grihamedhinam, of the householders, Dharman, duties, Anushikshamanaha, teaching by example, Jayantyam, in his wife Jayanti, Indradattayam, offered by the Lord Indra, Bhaya Lakshanam, of both types, Karma, activities, Samam na yam natam, mentioned in the scriptures, Abhiyunjan, forming, Atmajanam, sons, Atma Samananam, exactly like himself, Shatam, 100, Janayamasa, begot. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. After Nabhi Maharaj departed from Badrikashram, for Badrikashram, the Supreme Lord Rishabhadeva understood that his kingdom was his field of activities. He therefore showed himself as an example and taught the duties of a householder by first accepting brahmacharya under the direction of spiritual masters. He also went to live at the spiritual master's place, Gurukula. After his education was finished, he gave gifts, Guru Dakshina, to his spiritual masters and then accepted the life as a householder. He took a wife named Jayanti and begot 100 sons who were as powerful and qualified as he himself. His wife Jayanti had been offered to him by Indra, the king of heaven. Rishabhadeva and Jayanti performed householder life in an exemplary way, carrying out ritualistic activities ordained by the Shruti and Smriti Shastra. Purport. Being an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Rishabhadeva had nothing to do with material affairs. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Paritranaya Sadhunam Vinashaya Cha Dushkritam. The purpose of an incarnation is to liberate his devotees and stop the demoniac activities of the non-devotees. These are the two functions of the Supreme Lord when he incarnates. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said, in order to preach, one must live a practical life and show people how to do things. Apani achari bhakti shikhai mo sabare. One cannot teach others unless he behaves the same way himself. Rishabhdev was an ideal king and he took his education in the Gurukula, although he was already educated because the Supreme Lord is omniscient. Although Rishabhadeva had nothing to learn from the Gurukula, he went there just to teach the people in general how to take education from the right source, from Vedic teachers. He then entered household life and lived according to the principles of Vedic knowledge, Shruti and Smriti. In his Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu 1.2.10, Srila Rupa Goswami, quoting the Skanda Purana, says, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidhim Vina Aikantiki Harer Bhaktir Upatayeva Kalpate. Human society must follow the instructions received from Shruti and Smriti, Vedic literature. Practically applied in life, this is worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead according to the Pancharatrika Vidhi. Every human being must advance his spiritual life and at the end return home back to Godhead. Maharaj Rishabhdev strictly followed all these principles. He remained an ideal grihastha and taught his sons how to become perfect in spiritual life. These are some examples of how he ruled the earth and completed his mission as an incarnation. So I forgot to glorify Bhagavatam before started reading. So first I will glorify Bhagavatam, then I will chant the pranam mantras expressing my gratitude to Acharyas. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Narayanam Namaskritya. Narayanam Namaskritya. Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam. Tato Jayamudiraye. Tato Jayamudiraye. नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्य उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साधुवैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीन बंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितनां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरं हरिः ॐ तत्सत्। Hare Krishna. Translation once again. After Nabhi Maharaj departed for Badrik Ashram, the Supreme Lord Rishabhadeva understood that his kingdom was his field of activities. He therefore showed himself as an example and taught the duties of a householder by first accepting brahmacharya under the direction of spiritual masters. He also went to live at the spiritual master's place, Gurukula. After his education was finished, he gave gifts, Guru Dakshina, to his spiritual masters and then accepted the life of a householder. He took a wife named Jayanti and begot 100 sons who were as powerful and qualified as he himself. His wife Jayanti had been offered to him by Indra, king of heaven. Rishabdeva and Jayanti performed householder life in an exemplary way, carrying out ritualistic activities ordained by the Shruti and Smriti Shastra. So, this is the chapter where the characteristics of Maharaj Rishabdev is very, very nicely being highlighted. Till now, we have read that Rishabdev was very nicely manifesting all the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavat Lakshanam. And we saw that he didn't display it just in one shot. To increase the parental affection, day by day his qualities were increasing. And because of these qualities, everybody was loving him. And because he was charming everybody's mind through his glorious qualities of Godhead, a point came where everyone wanted him to rule the earth. Maharaj Nabhi, seeing his son as the best amongst men, named him as Rishabdev and was experiencing bliss in Vatsalya Rasa, seeing how his son was becoming well built in terms of body, prowess, influence, strength, name and fame, enthusiasm, etc. Now, just like when Maharaj Prithu was ruling the planet and was trying to establish his dominion or Varchasva on the planet, Indra became envious. We see something similar happening here. When Rishabdev was growing up, he had not yet become the king. In the presence of his father only, Rishabdev was so famous as a Yuvraj that Indra again became envious. And then what he did, he stopped putting or showering rain on the land or the area where Rishabdev was staying. So in those days, this Bharat Varsha was called as Ajanabha. It is mentioned in the verse number 3 that Indra was not giving rain on Ajanabha. So Maharaj Rishabdev's one of the putra or one of the sons is Bharat. And on the name of Bharat is this Bharat Varsha. So Bharat Varsha has been known by various names. In Bhagavatam only become another name of Bharat Varsha as Ajanabha. So by the potency of his Yog Maya Shakti, he started, without the help of Indra, bringing rain sufficiently on the land. So this crushed the pride of Indra. And seeing all these great activities where Nabhi was not only able to rule the planet but also able to control the supernatural circumstances around the planet, Nabhi was very much sure that now it's time for us to enthrone Maharaj Rishabdev. So, but Bhagavatam gives some very specific reasons why Maharaj Nabhi enthroned him. Number one reason was that he was very, very personal and popular favorite amongst everybody. This influence and name and fame is also a great power. When Lord Ram was a prince, he had become such a personal favorite of everybody in Ayodhya that they all wanted him to become the king. So that was already a very good reason for Maharaj Dashrath to make him a king. And the reasons were that he was very equal in vision with everybody. He was having a compassionate heart for everybody. He was friendly with everybody. Although he was the son of the king, but he did not show any egoistic application of power and position. Basically, everybody in the kingdom was able to empathize with Lord Ram, feel pride in the activities of Lord Ram, and Lord Ram was able to sympathize and empathize with everybody. So this is the quality of a great leader. He is able to connect with everybody. And everybody feels that the leader understands me, and the leader also is able to reciprocate accordingly. Same qualifications were being shown by Maharaj Rishabdev also. He was giving protection to everybody according to the religious system. Protection which Maharaj Rishabdev was giving was not favoritism and nepotism. That you are my friend, even if you do some crime, you will get away with it, and you are not my friend, so I will punish you. So, the fifth verse tells a very nice word. Samaya Setu Rakshayam. So, he made a nice Vedic system where everybody was treated equally according to their qualification, according to their position, status, etc. Because he was very popular and he was able to give protection to everybody according to the Vedic culture. Therefore, Maharaj Nabhi wanted to enthrone him as the king. But the first thing which he did was that he entrusted him to the Brahmanas. He did not just place his son, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I have got you because I became a worshipper of the Brahmanas and served them nicely. So now you don't need to go to Gurukul, you don't need to learn anything, just sit on the throne, enjoy life. That was not the case. He entrusted Maharaj Rishabdev to the Brahmanas, and then he personally went to Badrikashram, and we read that he went back home, back to Godhead. Now, in today's verse, we are reading that what Maharaj Rishabdev is left with. He is left with a planetary rule, and his father is not there to guide him. So he is understanding what to do in life. So, in any circumstance, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is omniscient and sarvagnya. He knows everything. He doesn't need to understand anything. Everything which is there to understand is already understood by him. And because he has understood and made others understand, that's why we are able to understand. But still, he set a very good example. Today's verse talks about two aspects. The ideal brahmachari life of Maharaj Rishabdev and the ideal grihastha life of Maharaj Rishabdev. So he understood that he has to rule a kingdom, and that is a very social role where he has to interact with various kinds of people. Traditionally speaking, brahmacharis and sannyasis would live in forests. In the 7th canto, we'll read the descriptions of brahmachari. Just like in previous chapters, we read Maharaj Priyavrat was a brahmachari living in the forests. But then when he had to accept a kingdom, a very, very social, bureaucratic kind of a role, he had to accept a wife. But in order to accept a wife, one needs to get trained first. In the Krishna book, Krishna and Sudama are talking to each other when Sudama has come to meet Lord Krishna. Krishna is telling that one should become a servant of their spiritual master in the prime ages and try to serve him sincerely. One should live only for the purpose of the satisfaction of Guru. This is the purpose of brahmachari life. He has to live in the house of the spiritual master and he has to remain a humble servant of the spiritual master, and all his activities should be done for the benefit of Guru. That is the principles of brahmachari ashram. And after that, Krishna mentions that if possible, if one can remain a servant of Guru all his life, one should do so. However, if one is unable to do so, they should give proper Guru Dakshina to the Guru and accept a suitable wife under the guidance of Guru. These are the statements of Lord Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam or Krishna book. Similarly, here also we are seeing that under the guidance of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, first Maharaj Rishabhadev is accepting brahmacharya under the direction of his spiritual masters. The purport it is saying, Apani achari bhakti shikhaimu sabare. One cannot teach others unless he behaves the same way himself. Rishabhadev was an idle king and he took his education in the Gurukula, although he was already educated because of being the Supreme Lord. Although Rishabhadev had nothing to learn from the Gurukula, he went there just to teach the people in general how to take education from the right source, from Vedic teachers. So this is a very, very important thing. Throughout Bhagavatam we are saying, whether it is the Prachetas or whether it is any other king for that matter, always before entering Grihastha life, they practice brahmacharya life under the guidance of the spiritual master as a menial servant. And that is very, very necessary. That trains one to become an ideal Grihastha. And after that we see that he is entering Grihastha life. So because Indra had done some envious transaction with Maharaj Rishabhadev, so in order to pacify him, as soon as he came out of Gurukul, he gave him a girl whose name was Jayanti. And then he married with Jayanti. And then he produced 100 sons. Now, Srila Prabhupada is telling Paritranaya, in the purport he is telling Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam. This is the purpose of an incarnation. Every incarnation has a specific purpose, but the generic purpose of all the incarnations is this. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam. In the verse, in the purport of this verse, specifically, Srila Prabhupada has made a statement. Lord Krishna descends for the specific purpose of mitigating the anxieties of the pure devotees who are very anxious to see him in his original Vrindavan pastimes. So the devotees of Lord Krishna, they are already above the modes of material nature. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samtitya jnana brahma bhuya. They are already on the Brahma Bhuta platform, na shochati, na kankshati. Such people, although they stay in a dukhalayam, but their experience in Krishna consciousness is such that they are able to easily overcome the material miseries and they are always in a state of bliss. Best example is Prahlad Maharaj. He was into serious miseries. His father was burning him, stamping him through elephant, trying to poison him, throwing him from a mountain. But never in Bhagavatam we are reading that Prahlad Maharaj is shedding tears of agony or he is telling why my father is doing this to me, or not even a single prayer to the Supreme Lord where he is expressing his misery. Because he was above the modes of material nature. So similarly, question comes, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam. Why to save the devotees? What is the concept of saving the devotees? They are already saved because they are performing bhakti yoga. It is only to mitigate the spiritual separation which the devotees are feeling from Krishna that he comes. So Prabhupada is telling, Lord Krishna descends to mitigate the anxieties of the pure devotees who are very anxious to see him in his original Vrindavan pastimes. Therefore, the prime purpose of any incarnation is to satisfy his unalloyed devotees. So there is prime purpose and secondary purpose. The prime purpose is to satisfy the devotees who are seriously longing in pain of separation from Krishna. And the secondary byproduct purpose is Vinashaya cha Dushkritam. He establishes the dharma by his presence and breaks all the adharmic forces which are there anywhere and everywhere, according to time, place and circumstances. Sometimes he needs to kill the body of a demon, sometimes he needs to kill the demoniac mentality inside the heart of a living entity. But the essential purpose is Paritranaya Sadhana. Question can be asked that why the Supreme Lord needs to descend? There is no difference between the name of Krishna and Krishna himself. Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddha Nityamukta Abhinatvam Nama. So let the devotees be anxious. Let them chant Hare Krishna. Let them just go on with life. Or rather, when one takes the shelter of a pure devotee of Krishna, in the heart of the pure devotee one sees the compassion of Krishna, and one can see the hand of Krishna in the activities of a pure devotee. So one can feel the association of Krishna in the association of Acharya also. One can feel the association of Krishna through the purports of Bhagavatam. So why Krishna needs to personally descend? Krishna personally descends out of his sweet will, of course. But in certain cases, for example, the demons, the material nature can kill them. But there are certain cases where Krishna personally needs to take charge of the situation. Because he wants to experience the association of devotees. He wants to experience some rasas. And he wants to do something which is not possible by anyone else. So similarly, sometimes the Nitya Siddha devotees of the Lord or the eternal associates of the Lord, they are experiencing so much grief in separation from the Lord that nobody else except the Supreme Lord can pacify them. For example, we read again in the Krishna book that all of a sudden one day Lord Balram decides, let me go to Vrindavan. And then he gets onto his chariot and he rides there and spends some time in Vrindavan, and then again comes back and tells one line to Krishna. That Krishna, you are not going to Vrindavan. I could not see their pain of separation. I personally went, but I have realized I can also not pacify them. You only need to go. And Krishna is telling, I will go, I will. So Balram is scolding Krishna that why are you not going? So now what is the difference between Balram and Krishna? There is no difference. But there are certain activities which the Supreme Lord needs to do himself personally. For that he needs to descend personally. That is Paritranaya Sadhana. That nobody except Krishna can do. Now, another very implicit purpose of every incarnation is Vinashaya cha Dushkritam. The best way in which every incarnation does Vinashaya is that they establish the Sanatana Dharma and they establish the Varnashram Dharma. In all incarnations, these two things are done. In fact, Dharma can be broadly classified in two categories, Sanatana Dharma, Varnashram Dharma. So, I was very happy to read a very, very clear description of Sanatana Dharma in the 7th canto of Bhagavatam. So first they define what is the need of or where the Sanatana Dharma comes from. Dharma moolam hi Bhagwan sarva veda mayo harihi smritam cha tad vitam rajan yena chatma prasidati. So the Dharma moolam, the root of all moolam, or the root of all dharma is Bhagwan. He is the essence of all religious principles, root of all religious principles. Sarva Veda Mayo Harihi. And the memory which the great authorities they have, which is called as Shruti and Smriti, etc., that is also Krishna only. He is the essence of all knowledge, he is the root of all Vedic literature, and he is the memory of all great authorities. That means, when people say, this Shruti and Smriti is coming from human beings, it is wrong. Smritam Sarva Ved Mayo Harihi. He is the memory of all great authorities on Vedic literature. Another instance which is coming in my mind which can substantiate this line is that Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, he was not able to find a bhakti purport on one of the verses of Bhagavad Gita. And he was a great, not Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, Advaita Acharya. And he was a great Acharya, everybody used to refer to him. Whatever he will say will remain in the memory of the various generations. So he decided to fast. And he was praying to the Supreme Lord that please explain me the purport of this. And he was chanting, fasting. And then Lord Chaitanya comes to him and explains to him the bhakti purport of that particular verse of Bhagavad Gita. Sarva Veda Mayo Hari. So Advaita Acharya is an authority, and the memory of this great authority is being provided by Lord Chaitanya. So the principle of religion is to be understood as evidence. Whatever is written in the scriptures, that itself is evidence that it is coming from Krishna. And the basis of religious principle is that everything is satisfied, including one's mind, soul, and even one's body, if everyone serves Hari. Savai pumsam paro dharmo ito bhaktira dhokshaje ahaitukya pratihata yayatma suprasita. So dharma is coming from Bhagwan. It is coming through great authorities whose memory is also coming from Bhagwan. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating. When they follow this Sanatan Dharma, which is coming from Bhagwan, everybody is fully satisfied. Now, what is Sanatan Dharma? Narad Muni is very nicely explaining to Maharaj Yudhishthira. He tells that Sanatan Dharma has 30 characteristics. If anybody can try to develop these 30 characteristics, that will extremely please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What are the principles of Sanatan Dharma? Number one, truthfulness, mercy, austerity, that is fasts on certain days of the month, bathing twice a day, tolerance, discrimination between right and wrong, control of the mind, control of the senses, non-violence, celibacy, charity, reading of the scripture, simplicity, satisfaction, rendering service to saintly persons, gradually taking leave of unnecessary engagements, observing the futility of unnecessary activities of human society, remaining silent and grave and avoiding unnecessary talk. This is also Sanatana Dharma. Okay? Considering whether one is the body or the soul, distributing food equally to all living entities, both men and animals, seeing every soul, especially in the human form, as a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, hearing about the activities and instructions given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These are 21 characteristics. Now these are, according to Srila Prabhupada, these are assistants to the primary characteristics. The next 9 are the primary characteristics of Sanatana Dharma. The first 21 which I said, they are the secondary characteristics of Sanatana, dependent characteristics of Sanatana Dharma. So what are the most essential 9 characteristics of Sanatana Dharma? We have heard this many times. It is being repeated again in Srimad Bhagavatam. Always remembering these activities and instructions, trying to render service, performing worship, offering obeisances, becoming a servant, becoming a friend, and surrendering one's whole life to Krishna. Basically, this is Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnum, Smaranam, Padasevanam. Those 9 things are only mentioned here. O King Yudhishthira, these 30 qualifications must be acquired in the human form of life. Simply by trying to acquire these qualifications, one can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is Sanatana Dharma. And Srila Prabhupada has written a beautiful purport to this. I have decided that whenever I will talk about Sanatana Dharma, I will quote that purport and mention these activities. Sanatana Dharma just doesn't mean putting Jai Sri Ram status on WhatsApp and calling ourselves a Sanatani. Sanatani means being truthful, being austere, having bath twice a day, tolerance, celibacy, simplicity, all these things. Talking less, that is also Sanatana Dharma. And I was very much amused. I found great joy when I was reading this purport. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes a very, very beautiful, he's at his poetic best. He says, these are the general qualifications of a human being, these 30. There is no question of a secular state or an ecclesiastical state. Unless one is educated in the above mentioned 30 qualities, there cannot be any peace. So without Sanatana Dharma, there is no peace. And Sanatana Dharma is meant for everybody. Everybody needs to have bath twice a day. Everybody needs to hear about the activities of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everybody needs to do charity. Everybody needs to read scripture. This is Sanatana. And Rishabdev Maharaj is showing that through his activities. Yad yad acharati shreshthas tad tad evitaro janah sayat pramanam kurte lokastad anuvartate. Whatever actions a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by his exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Srila Prabhupada is saying in the purport of this very famous verse, people in general always require a leader who can teach the public by practical behavior. A leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes. Lord Chaitanya said that a teacher should behave properly before he begins teaching. One who teaches in that way is called Acharya, or the ideal teacher. Therefore, a teacher must follow the principles of Shastra to teach the common man. The teacher cannot manufacture rules against the principles of revealed scriptures. The revealed scriptures like Manu Samhita and similar others are considered the standard books for the human society. Thus, the leader's teachings should be based on the principles of such standard Shastras. One who desires to improve himself must follow the standard rules as they are practiced by the previous great teachers. Srimad Bhagavatam also affirms that one should follow in the footsteps of great devotees. And that is the way to the progress, and that is the way of progress on the path of spiritual realization. The king or the executive head of a state, the father and the school teacher are all considered to be natural leaders of innocent people in general. All such natural leaders have great responsibility to their dependents, therefore they must be conversant with the standard books of moral and spiritual codes. When we approach various schools, colleges, universities, corporates, with a desire to teach the Sanatana Dharma, we should present this purport of Srila Prabhupada. So convincing. If you see the various Srila Prabhupada memories, almost all disciples are telling that we followed Srila Prabhupada and we gave our life to serve him because we saw that there was no gap in what he said and what he followed personally himself. That is the greatest source of inspiration. That's how the kings used to work earlier. They used to announce a battle and then they used to lead from the front. Not that which is happening now. Attack Ukraine. And then I am sitting in my house and I am eating nicely, sleeping nicely, mating nicely, defending nicely. But Russia should keep struggling against Ukraine. That doesn't inspire anybody. I was having a conversation with someone and we were just thinking that people are proud of the soldiers of the nation. In such a state, where they don't feel inspired because of having a great leader, will the soldiers work if we stop the salary of the soldiers? Are the soldiers really feeling, when somebody is standing with a gun in front of them, about to kill them, are they really feeling pressure from the superiors to go through it? Are they doing it because they want to fight, or are they doing it because of they are being salaried? What is the real reason why the soldiers are fighting? That was a nice discussion which I had. So therefore, it is very, very important for a leader to lead from the front. A leader commands respect when he follows what he says. And in such a way, when he becomes an acharya, and when he says something, it penetrates the hearts of the people and creates a very, very non-critical environment in the hearts of his followers, where they desire to follow him. When this is not there, then sometimes because of the structure or hierarchy or the management, in a critical atmosphere from the heart, people follow. But that doesn't lead to good results. That leads to ordinary or mediocre results, or sometimes no results also. Very rarely a leader leads from the front and knows how to inspire people, rules the heart of the people, and then when they say acharyas, they become acharyas because there is no difference between what they say and what they do. And when acharyas say something, everybody follows. So therefore, Rishabdev, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He has already charmed everybody's mind and hearts by being the Supreme Personality of Godhead in front of them. But he knew that people will raise a question in future. So therefore, in order to thoroughly and sincerely, honestly inspire them on the path of morality, he himself went to the Gurukul and became a brahmachari, although there was no need for him to do. And then he himself accepted householder life. And he had no obligation to say yes to Indra. You did some mischief, now you are giving one girl, I should marry him, it is my obligation. No, the Supreme Lord can do anything. In fact, I was comparing his position to position of Maharaj Priyavrat. I was not correct in my comparison. Maharaj Priyavrat is a Jivatma. He needs to marry to rule a kingdom. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead can without marriage only rule the kingdom also. But he follows the rules and regulations of the human society. Imagine a helicopter is flying up in the sky. The helicopter is, the rules of the traffic, red, green and orange, is not applicable on the helicopter. It can just keep flying. I'm just giving an analogy to explain the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead, while flying in the sky, stops when the red light on the street below comes. Why? Because he loves the human society. So that the human society can see up, Supreme Lord is stopping, we should also stop. And then when green comes, the helicopter moves. So the people also move. So in that way, Apani Achari Prabhu, Shikhaumu Sabar. He himself is enacting those pastimes and he is trying to teach everybody. This is his love for the Jivatma. This is his love. And he expresses it again and again and again through his activities. He is very, very hopeful that the Jivatma will take up those teachings and will try to act according to it, come above the modes of material nature and become ecstatic in the chanting of his names, glories, pastimes, etc. So with that, I would like to conclude today's discussion. Just to summarize, we saw how Maharaj Nabhi made Rishabdev as the king because of all his ideal qualities. And we saw how Maharaj Rishabdev exhibited an ideal brahmachari life, which is non-optional, and an ideal grihastha life. Under the guidance of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, he understood that his responsibility is the arena of ruling the planet. So therefore he took ideal steps. He went to Gurukul, he learned some nice lessons, gave nice Guru Dakshina to the teachers, took their permission, got married, produced 100 sons, about which we will read in the next verse. We understood that the Supreme Personality of Godhead in all the incarnations has a specific purpose, but the general purpose in all the incarnations is to establish Sanatana Dharma and Varnashram Dharma. We saw the various nitty-gritty details of Sanatana Dharma. The essence of Sanatana Dharma is to please the Supreme Lord, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Archanam, all those things. And until unless one develops these qualifications, which we discussed, which are mentioned in Sanatana Dharma, one is not a human being also. We saw that the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends primarily to remove the spiritual or mitigate the spiritual anxieties of his devotees. Paritranaya sadhana. And finally we concluded that whatever activity a great man does, the common men follow. The great man does not need to perform those activities for his own survival, but he still does it just to set a good example. So therefore, a great man is a great man because he is very magnanimous in his heart and thinks about others and takes responsibility of the peace and prosperity of the society. We understood how much the Supreme Lord loves us because he is enacting such nice pastimes, such nice incarnations. And he himself is undergoing so many activities which he does not need to do just because he loves us. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? Shloka number of Sanatana Dharma is 7, 10, 8 to 12. 7, 11, 8 to 12, sorry. Yes. Jayanti is the wife of Maharaj Rishabdev, and the Bhagavatam says Indra gifted Jayanti to Maharaj Rishabdev to do magic. Bhagavatam doesn't give much detail. Jayanti is the wife of Rishabdev, and she was able to give birth to 100 children, about which we'll read in the next class. Some of them will become brahmacharis, some of them will become 10 principal sons will be there, 3 of them will become paramahamsas, and 7 of them will accept Grihasthashram, like that further things will be told. And the eldest one will be Bharat.
9, no? Navayogendras.
Navayogendras? I'm confusing with some other kingdom. Yeah, maybe Navayogendras. Yeah. Yes. Okay, we will end today's discussion. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.